This one gentleman who'll always keep quiet throughout. So when I was engaging with some of the members of the communities, I was like, no, this person doesn't talk. And actually he has stayed for like 5 years without talking. He'll just use gestures and all that. So what happened is that we had this trauma awareness session. Yeah. Which is rooted in a community way. Yeah. So when we had this trauma session where people have to a different way of expressing yourself, for the very first time this gentleman opened up. Yeah. Yes. The first time he was able to speak.
What was impressive was that the leader of the Christian faith just sat there with his chair and the other people and all the pastors. And then the ritualists came with the communities on both sides, and the cattle were there. So they did their ritual, and the Christian pastors were there, just allowing them to conduct the rituals. So after they concluded, they slaughtered the cow, and we ate the meat raw somehow. We just put it on fire for a few minutes. And that is how they all agreed that, okay, they have reconciled. And now communities from the other side that was cut off can access Ikotos, can even go up to Isoke to the market. During the closing, the www.
It's not happening. If for more information, go to www. and potholes.org. Peace Canal's website is up as well, so great. peacecanal.org, and is getting some new stuff there. What else should I say? So here we are for another POFcast in our brand new location. I'm Rob Lancaster.
I'm Minagano Kape.
I'm David Vincent.
And I'm Judith Doruba.
Welcome, Judith. We're going to hear more from you in detail as we go through today. And we're going to be exploring some different stories of peace building. So that's going to be an interesting place to launch out to look at different themes of peace building and what we're all learning through different experiences of it. But we're going to start, as always, with reflections on peace. And Minagano, as always, is our diligent model of preparation.
Yes, excited.
What's in your mind?
So I think last week, Badinglo and Boma National Park have been recognized by UNESCO as one of the World Heritage sites. And I think over the last week, I've been watching videos and photos of the sites. And one of the videos I found very interesting, where they're showing the videos about how the animals are migrating. Yeah. And when you look at it from afar, it's a very beautiful, synchronized movement of the animals. And it looks very peaceful. But also when you look at a close-up video, it's very chaotic. Because some of the animals are crashing with each other. Some of them are falling down and trying to continue the running. And what that made me think is how something that can look very peaceful can also be very chaotic at the same time. So just the thinking that chaos and peace can both exist in the same place and at the same time, and it's all fine.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Maybe we should spend another 10 minutes on that. No pressure, David.
This is deep. You know how we all have traveled outside South Sudan, and then when you're coming back in, I don't know of you guys, but I often have this sort of anxious feeling, like what's going to happen at the airport, this chaotic Juba International Airport, right? So coming back yesterday, of course, I was very calculative, wanted to rush and come to the office and all that. But then when we walked in, the first thing happened was we were picked from the plane directly by a bus. I was like, oh gosh, something has changed. So I got into the bus and then came to the migration section. And we just fall into the queue. Everybody fall into the queue, and everybody was quiet and calm and the order. And I was like, no, am I in South Sudan? It was really very peaceful. And the order just went through the migration and came out. I felt for the first time ever very peaceful day at the airport at that moment.
So you should be excited to travel.
Yeah. Yeah, he may be using a new lounge actually.
Oh.
The new...
I'll still be wondering what's going
Yeah.
Judith, yeah, what's your reflection on peace from the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think the past 2 days or 3 days, I've seen the Murukodo cultural festivals. And for me, this is actually coming up from the many festivals coming up this year. We have had the Mundari Cultural Festival, we have seen the Pojulu Cultural Festival, we have seen the Nyambar, and now we have seen the Murukodo. So this coming like an avenue bringing together people, because one of the key things is that many times people have a different perception about South Sudan. But now when communities are able to showcase how they're living together, their tradition and the cultural diversity, bringing different people together, for me, that felt really peaceful. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip today because we've got a lot of things to get through, and I haven't prepared. So let's cut to the moderator's right.
Yeah.
So I would like to come now to you, Judith, and let us know a little bit about how you ended up in the peace building world and what you've been doing in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think how I ended up in the peace building space comes from my personal experiences, basically. First of all, growing most of my times outside the country, and also seeing that most of the times my parents were away and I'm living in another country. My first job was actually with MSF, and I was in the administration. I worked for 3 months, but I felt like, no, I want to be closer to the communities. I had to apply for a national organization where we're working within the communities and addressing different issues. By then, it was issues around gender-based violence, but we're working around gender justice with police, with communities, doing research. And then I transitioned to ECOM, an international peace building organization, and then different research firms that I've worked with, and then Seja Salam, and now Safer World. So different experiences actually brings me closer to the aspect of peace within the communities. Yeah, every time I interact with communities, it gives me a different perspective why actually those most affected should shape the solutions for a sustainable peace. So yeah, every time I'm working closer, it actually brings me back to the concept that peace is very important for us to be able to enjoy our country, just like in other countries as well. Yeah.
And before we move on to other things, why are you still working on these things? I mean, it's maybe a question for everyone, but so many years now, after initially a great promise of peace and all the possibility around that, and still we're going in many of these areas. What is it that keeps you moving forward in this work?
I find fulfillment in seeing that communities are happy or living peaceful. I think 2 weeks ago, I was catching up with a friend, and she asked me, because she knows that I've been in the peace building space for more than 12 years. And then she asked me, are you still building peace? I told her, yes. He's like, where's the peace? Then I told the person, peace is not just Juba. And peace comprised of so many things. Last month, in June, I was facilitating a training on peace building, and then with communities from across the border, both Kenya and South Sudan. And then I told each and everyone to draw what peace actually meant to them. Yeah, some people are drawing schools, some people are drawing boreholes, some people are drawing just sitting together as a family, as peace. So this actually shapes also my thinking that, peace is felt differently. Sometimes just meeting your relatives, that's been peace that you have not met for a long time. Or maybe having services, or maybe having schools, or maybe just that satisfaction that, I think there are no gunshots today and it's peaceful. So every communities experience different dynamics. Yeah, and that actually tells us that as much as there is peace in one side, there is no peace on the other side. And our efforts as peace builders become very, very important in understanding the different dynamics where how communities actually understand peace and how do we also put them at the forefront in achieving that, the vision of peace they want. Yeah.
That's very deep.
Yeah. Okay, well,
Yeah.
this is going to go places. This podcast. All right, so we're gonna explore some stories now, and part of the impetus for this came because we were working with some of the teams where we're working on a review of what's been going well and lessons and so forth, and we started by just hearing some of the stories that they were picking up in the work that was happening, and then riffing off that. And that's a little bit what we're going to do in this conversation. So let's again start with you, Judith, and then we'll come to more from David and Minagano.
Okay.
Of all this work that you've done, what's a story that a short story that sticks in your mind for whatever reason?
Okay. One of the stories that actually sticks to my mind is around my cross-border work between South Sudan and Kenya. So we had that when you're looking at that Tekere corridor, it's a very fragile context. Yeah, it's very fragile context. In 2023, 2024, I traveled there for one of the mediation efforts, and we had to travel for 7 days. A trip that would have taken 1 day took us 7 days. And the final place we reached, there was literally no food. There's no water. And communities are surviving, I think, on this rainwater for survival. And it's the very first time that communities are actually asking, is there a government? Because we came with the government as well for all the three countries, South Sudan, Kenya, and Ethiopia. So then communities were very happy, but there were a number of issues that needed to be resolved. But then even beyond that is the buildup of that, After we have left, it still requires more efforts for the peace building. Now the women from the South Sudan side say that, okay, we're going to pursue this peace. Yeah, they worked for many weeks. So when they started the journey, I think when they traveled to Kenyan side, the government on the South Sudan side is like, are you sure you're going to go there? We have the warriors on the other side. They have guns. These are people who are armed. How are you going to do that? So then they have this movement called Mother's Voice. So it's more like a movement for advocating also for peace, for different issues around the communities. So when they approach their counterparts on the other side, they're able to speak to the young people who had the guns, who are creating insecurity maybe across the border, to listen to their grievances. So after that dialogue that they fostered, now it's peaceful. We have now peace committees that are formed across both sides. And within the peace committees, we have transformed warriors. Those transformed warriors actually helping in tracking down criminality within the communities, any Ketu-related violence, also acting as early warning teams within the border communities, and also the response, and ensuring that those issues are represented to the different authorities or stakeholders within that corridor as well. On the Kenyan side, actually, one of the amazing things is that these warriors are integrated to the government system now. They are called the National Police Reserve Force, which are working closely within the communities. On the South Sudan side, we still have these warriors actively championing peace. I remember one of the best instances was after February, there was a clash between the SPLM and SPLM-IO, where they're also mobilizing. There were young people who are mobilizing to join that, but they were able to de-escalate and tell these young people that we have relative peace and we don't want to lose this. Yeah, we need to maintain that. That's one of my my best stories, I think, in peace building, how community ownership is quite important, and working with those structures or most affected people shape the solutions of that. That's one of my best stories. And then the second one could be also from Upper Nile. Specifically, I'm looking at Malakal. So after the conflict in 2016, you all know the dynamics in Malakal have been very complex. Yeah, the social fabric has been broken down, and it was quite difficult. And we're working with these civil society organizations and different structures. But then our partner came up with the idea that, we're doing peace building, but we want to do it quite different. We have a very our social fabric is broken, and we don't trust each other, and we want this done also by the women. So they requested if we could support them with some aspect of livelihood, so which we accepted. Every effort towards peace building is important. Yeah, so they established a reconciliatory market, which brings together all the 5 tribes of Upper Nile. And as I speak now, that market is still there in Malakal. And every time I go to Malakal, I feel fulfilled that, okay, these women are still having a space to be able to discuss about their issues, as well as they're earning also from that. But also that's an effort for peace building. Yeah, that can translate to the communities. Yeah.
Going back to the first story a second, the phrase used was transformed warriors.
Yes.
Yeah, just say a little bit more about that.
Yes. So when I'm talking about transform warriors, so in the communities where they're cattle keepers, we have warriors in the communities. So those warriors are actively engaged when it comes to cattle raiding within the communities. And when you live in communities where people are pastoralists, it's very, very common. Yeah, in most of those communities. And I'll speak specifically to the cross-border dynamics, where we're having the Atekere, which is the Turkana, the Karamoja, the Nyangatom, and also the Toposa as well, communities that are living there. So each of those communities have warriors. So those warriors are more of like defense, but also they engage in cattle raiding as well in the communities. But we also know the impact of cattle raiding, which comes with also killing of people, which results into also revenge attacks and all that. So when I'm speaking about the reformed warriors, these are people that have reformed from conflict into peace champions. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really good.
Basically.
What comes to mind when you're listening to these stories?
I think I was reading the other day, and you started on the what keeps you going. So for me, when I hear stories like this, I was reading the other day on the word hope. Understanding the word hope. It's hope that keeps us. So hope gives us that. Give us the next step, push us to the next step, and that something else will happen the next day. So I'm doing this, although it's failed today, but I'm hopeful that something will happen. So hearing these positive stories, which unfortunately don't come up so much into the limelight, is the fact that a lot of the negativity covers everything, but such a positive stories gives me that hope. So for me, that's what is like, oh, okay. And then the last part of it is also the interconnectedness that we have, where I feel I'm doing the little I'm doing, Judith, Minagano, and you, everyone is doing the little thing. And then when you join those together, the impact that it can create, the ripple effect that it will create is quite incredible. So yeah, it's really good. It gives me hope.
Yeah, I think this the story she shares around the border area reminds me of the Akutidor work in Lake State, and how the Gelweng youth are now leading also peace efforts in Rumbek and different parts of Lake State. But one person that came to my mind is Achop from the family, who was also one of the youth who was from the Murle side, who has been engaging in cattle raid and such stuff. But now in most of the intercommunal governance structures meeting, he's a peace champion. He's there, like encouraging his communities to work for peace. So yeah, I just realized that there's similar approaches that are being used in the different parts of the country, or even across the regions that are working. So I think the question to us is now, how do we build on some of these things that we see are working across the board and advance it even further?
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's come back to that in terms of drawing out some of the themes and so forth. But let's pick up a couple of other stories from you two.
I can go. The story I'm thinking, I think it was in, I think it's 2023. We've had the Pieri Peace Agreement and all that happened. Then there was a cattle raid that took place. Some cattle were raided from Pieri, where the peace agreement was actually discussed between the Nuer and Dinka and the Murles. And I can't remember the exact number of the cattle that were raided, but then that almost caused chaos. On the other side of the Pieri, the youth they were angered because the cattle raid took place and people were killed. They were angered. So the question we asked back then was, with the area teams, was what could we do to stop you? And the question was, the answer said, no, there's nothing else we want. We want our cattle to be returned. And at the time, because we first started, I was like, what's the possibility of this thing happening? So everyone is like, yeah, it's going to happen. So we crossed down to the GPA side. We investigated, they found out where the cattle were. And yeah, the area where the cattle were. Now the question was, how do we access that area? It became very, very difficult. So the area coordinator then, who was the former chief administrator, Peter Guzulu, I said, Guzulu, I think we're going to attempt an impossible here. So Guzulu looked at me and said, David, you are crazy. We can't go to Katome, the village is called Katome, right after Wuno. And so Peter is like, no, we can't. First, the car cannot go. And I said, okay, but where can the car take us? And then when the car can't move, then we continue foot. Peter looked at me like, David, you're crazy. And then he knew that I wasn't crazy. I mean, I wasn't joking. He worked it out already. And so, yeah, we left. When we told the CA then, the chief administrator, who is Joshua Konyi, then Joshua was like, David, this is crazy. Like, no, we can do it. I think it's possible. And like, what do you want? And like, I don't need anything. We just need to carry water and some food, and then we go. Anyway, so we cut the story short. We drove. We kept driving. It's like, you're better off walking literally because there's no road. And what was quite amazing was we arrived in Katome and we had a community meeting. And then all of a sudden, we sort of stressed the reason why we are here and what was coming on the other side. And the leaders the HSED leaders just went out. And then we spent 3 days there. And then the leaders just went out and the cattle began to come. The next day is like 50 head of cattle, and then it's like, and it just gave me that possibility that something could happen. Anyway, the cattle were collected, and then the next part that we did was quite incredible. We took photos of all the cattle, and then when we came back, we sent the photos to Pieri, and the community in Pieri, those that their cattle were stolen, were able to recognize their cattle. Like, oh yeah, this is great. So that. They did not mobilize, as they said, because there was that hopeful. People are being hopeful. Long story short, some cattle ended up going, but majority did not go back, unfortunately. But for me, it's that hope. It's that again, bringing it back to the hope that yes, something could happen between this community. So that story stuck with me.
And also that we should not hold back from the crazy ideas.
Yes, exactly. We should not. And our own limitations should not stop us from doing what needed to be done.
No, this idea of walking as well. It was there in what you shared, Judith, too. But Minagano, what's for you?
Oh, a lot of stories, but one that have stuck with me for many years is 2023. I was supporting the church in their peace effort, and I still have this image vividly in my mind because the church was Eastern Equatorial State, a place called Ikotos. So there was a very bad conflict among the youth, and it's always around cattle raiding, revenge killing, stuff like that. But it got to a point where one community is completely cut off from accessing the market because the road is one. For them to reach Ikotos, they have to pass the village of their enemy to access the market and services. And this is where a line was drawn, and they know they cannot pass. So I think the church led a very long process of dialogue, meetings, several of them, before the communities agreed that they want to reconcile. And when we look at South Sudan's context and our cultures and the tradition, there are ways to cement an agreement and to consider that people have reconciled. And I think that was the interesting part, because we drove from Tori to Ikotos. It's a very long, bumpy ride, but very beautiful at the same time, because for those who know Eastern Equatoria, it's very mountainous. We have to pass through the Kedepo Valley, and it was so beautiful. So when we reached Ikotos, we had like 2 days of conversation between the community. So when they concluded and said, okay, we're reconciling, there was a meeting point where they agreed. So what happened is one community is to come to the meeting point with a cow that will be sacrificed, and the other community also come. And so in the evening, both communities sat there, and that mission, I think one of the highest leader in the church was there, like the highest person within the religious institution, within the Christian religious institution was there. And the community said they have to do their ritual. So there was a woman who looked like she was a ritualist, and what Junubin would like to call a witch or whatever.
Yes.
So what impressed me was, what was impressive was that the leader of the Christian faith just sat there with his chair and the other people and all the pastors. And then the ritualists came with the communities on both sides, and the cattle were there. So they did their ritual, and the Christian pastors were there, just allowing them to conduct the rituals. So after they concluded, they slaughtered the cow, and we ate the meat raw somehow. We just put it on fire for a few minutes. And that is how they all agreed that, okay, they have reconciled. And now communities from the other side that was cut off can access Ikotos, can even go up to Isoke to the market. And to me, it's the tolerance that was exercised by the church. Because in most cases, some people would say, oh, we don't want to, this cannot be done because we're the church, this is devil things, but they allowed for that to happen because they understand the communities and what is important to them and what is needed to achieve peace. So to me, the lesson around that is on tolerance, and also for you to be able to achieve peace, you really need to tolerate and understand the context of people, and that things cannot always go your way. So that was quite fascinating to me.
Now she's just made me want to know the church leader. You didn't say his or her name, and I'm like, wow.
It was okay. I hope he would be okay with that. It's Cardinal Bishop Ameo, before he was a cardinal.
Before he was a
So we were there before he was made a cardinal. So we went with them, and there were a lot of other people from the Council of Churches.
Nice.
It was quite impressive. I still have the pictures.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And Rob, I think that the key part there is that, the Christianity, the emergence of Christianity in South Sudan, and what that did in terms of replacing what was the African traditional beliefs, and how we took it upon us that now whoever does or performs the rituals or does those things considered to be satanic, and we've come across that during our dialogue processes as well.
But I think when you look at South Sudan compared to other countries, we are multi-faith, But I think there's a great level of tolerance when we think about the religion and the Muslims, and you find a family with Muslims and Christians, and we just go to these celebrations and things are fine. For some countries, it's very difficult. There's almost intolerance for other religions.
And I think from that also now, the aspect of the tolerance, even nowadays when you're organizing events, and if they are both Muslims and also Christians, they usually give them all opportunities. So I think that explains the tolerance that we have adapted as people working in the space as well, and even the communities.
When you hear these other stories, Judith, what else comes to mind for you? Like, what strikes you from these examples?
I think from this example, what struck me most is actually the resilience, within the communities, and that also makes me reflect on part of my work on transitional justice. When I was working closely with survivors of violence, within South Sudan and also in the refugee camps in Uganda, basically. You find out that people are very, very resilient. And when you listen to their stories, it's quite very sad stories. And in one of the sessions we have had was, we usually bring people together, but then there's this one gentleman who'll always keep quiet throughout. So when I was engaging with some of the members of the communities, I was like, no, this person doesn't talk. And actually he has stayed for like 5 years without talking. They'll just use gestures and all that. So what happened is that we had this trauma awareness session. Yeah. Which is rooted in a community way. Yeah. So when we had this trauma session where people have to, a different way of expressing yourself, for the very first time, this gentleman opened up. Yeah. Yes. The first time he was able to speak. And to be honest, the story was horrible. Even when I went home, I was traumatized after that story, because this is somebody who has lost his entire family during the crisis. Yeah. The entire family was cut into pieces, buried in mass grave, and he was forced to carry those remains and bury them. So ever since that day, he lost his voice. Yeah, he lost his voice. I think now that was the first time we had to take them through the counseling sessions. And then now we have now the formation of the Survivors Network. And that time I was coordinating across both of South Sudan and also across Uganda, and then also I was able to support also in chairing mostly the Justice Advisory Group, which has more like South Sudanese experts, international actors that brings together, and also sometimes brings the voices of these people to be able to speak up and just having their own space. But then even beyond that, after these engagements, these people, the people in the network are actually able to also help other survivors within the network, to build in more resilience and just give them hope in life that, it's possible. So every time I hear different stories in peace building and in different experiences, it also tells me more about the resilience of the people and how they're able to adapt and still move on. And I think that is something that has kept us going. Last year they were in a space and then there were gunshots. So when we had the gunshots, everyone was quiet. As soon as the gunshots went quiet, everyone was normal. Then I was like, what have you become? Resilient? Or now you're just used to the situation? Basically, yeah.
So this resilience thing is interesting. What else would you say about this idea of resilience? Because it's a word that's used a lot, right? And then ironically, it's used, programming talks about the resilience programming as if there's no resilience there. But what you say,
but I think if we looked even at our programming, what we are trying to really at the center of is to build community resilience, and the actors we work with, we want to build their resilience towards what is happening around them. I think South Sudan people often refer or reference that how resilient we are. And truly, if we look at our history of the conflict and where we are today, I think that absolutely we could say that we are a very resilient community, because if you look at the face of so many things that are happening. But I think the key thing for us is with the actors we are working with, and in particular, for example, the Cattle Care Mom Youth, how do they come to the point where they can they are able to say no to some of the things, and they are able to change some of their behaviors, and they're able to say, look, no matter what had happened, I'm able to hold back, I'm able to exercise restraint, and I'm able to move on, and I'm able to see there is a possibility of breaking that cycle of conflict. And all those, for me, I look at it as that resilience that we are looking at achieving.
Me, I think I have a bittersweet relationship with the word resilience, because I feel like sometimes it is used just maybe not from especially by authorities to really not give the people what they deserve. Because we have heard several times, like
in their speeches.
In the speech, you are very resilient people, but you are the people that we have. You're the government. We have given you the power and the responsibility to look after the country and to provide services to the people. But then you're not doing all that, and then you're saying, "Oh, you're very resilient." So this is the bitter side that I have, relationship that I have with that word. But from the other side, I think in the different works that we do, we try to look at it from the angle of how do we tap into the resources, into the skills, into the powers that communities have within themselves to bring out the best for themselves. But I think it's a word that I am quite careful when it comes to using it, because sometimes it's just used to take advantage of people.
So let's pick up, because a lot of the stories as well, it was about something very local, even distant, remote, and I think all three examples were quite remote in terms of where, which is interesting. So just to frame, so one ungenerous way of looking at this whole situation from the external perspective is that you all had your independence in 2011, and then a bunch of people came in from outside and said, great, you've got your independence, now let's write your constitution. Okay, great, you've got a constitution, and that means now we have these structures that we need to have across the country that are basically replicating what is in other places. Great, and now we need to have all these trainings on how to resolve disputes and how to do this, and this, and then when we've done all of that, everything's going to be great, and it's still not great. But you're all referring to things happening at a local level, the capacity of people to manage things. Okay, resilience is one thing, but then also to find solutions and manage things. So what's going on with this like traditional way of addressing things? You're giving examples where that's being leveraged. What else would you say about this dynamic of what needs to happen to get the most out of what is already there in the skills, in the traditions, in the resources of the communities?
I think so I think from all these stories, there's this rich skills already within our communities, and some of them are being put into use, but I think some of them are not. And I think one of the biggest challenges politicization of the communities, because when we look at our communities, we know the structures. We have chiefs,
and the chiefs, there are different types of chiefs in the different communities, and they have different responsibilities and mandates when it comes to peace, when it comes to problem solving. There are certain problems that communities will know it is this chief with this kind of mandate that can do it. But I think over the years of conflict, I think some of these structures within the communities has been eroded, and most of these chiefs or the traditional leaders have been embedded somehow into the political system. Actually, the traditional cultural chieftain system has been politicized in a way. And this is where you find people are referring to other chiefs that these are the government chiefs, and these are the myth chiefs that are maybe appointed. Some of them are hereditary. That's the word, yeah. Yes, based on the cultures of the people. But now you find it with the wars, with the SPLM, and then you have they have created chief structures, which is also part of the local government system, which is good, if only they can be allowed to exercise their independence. So to me, this is where I find the challenge come and the gaps come, where we have chiefs who are powerless. They're powerless within their communities because they don't command the same level of authority that they used to command in the past, because in the past that mandate, that legitimacy is fully given to them by the communities. But now some of them it's really given to them by the government and the authorities and who they're loyal to. So and that makes it very difficult also to tap into some of this traditional, to fully enjoy the benefits or the benefits that comes with the traditional way of doing things. That's why even in the peace building space, we find ourselves mixing, because even working with the chiefs, we have to be very careful. We have to analyze their loyalties and stuff like that, because it can also complicate everything. Communities will tell you, oh, we don't trust this chief is aligned to this party or this group. So yeah, I think it's a disadvantage to the peace building work. Yeah.
I think it's of reason when we see now whether it's international or national NGOs now, their framework or their approach is sort of now being layered around or within, they're looking at the context, the conflict, the traditional conflict resolution methodologies that are already there. But I think what we missed in the beginning, the start of our work, not just we, but many of us who are in the sector, is to appreciate the traditional concept and the processes that are laid there. We had it. What we have brought in, and again, in this context, referring to we as the peace builders, we have created a framework around it. But traditionally, when I have an issue or an issue has happened, in my village, I know exactly who to go to, and there's a process. It's there, and that's the result. What really beats me, in my understanding, is when we look at the national level conflict. At the subnational level, because our stories are the grassroots, that's where we're doing a lot of things. But one of the issues in my critique in terms of the national peace kind of framework is the missed opportunity. They brought, and probably would be the mediators, they brought in this sort of a framework, international framework, to discuss the issue of South Sudan. And that's where we wasted until today. So there are some, and when you look at the traditional method, it's about restorative justice. It's not just about the punitive kind of way, but it's where I have an issue with you. But then at the end of the day, the end result is that I shake your hands and we reconcile, a black compensation is done to cement our relationship, and that it will be in the form of an animal or a chicken or whatever it is. We don't do that. When we look at Dr. Riek and Salva Kiir Mayardit after the 2018, what did they do? They signed some piece of a paper, and then they raised it up, and we are like, yeah, hallelujah. That's it. But if you bring Salva Kiir chief and you bring Dr. Riek chief, they will tell you, we need to do this. We need to kill something in here. So they missed that concept. And for me as a peace builder, I feel really sad that we, the nationals, we are not pushing our way through and say, hang on, there is a way we need to do this. And I think we can influence that by politely bringing it up when these international frameworks are put in front of us.
Yes, and I think I'll pick up from both experiences of Minagano and also David. Yeah. Most of our experiences have been at the grassroots level, very local level. And I agree that there's a lot of potential on ground. And also just reflecting from the time that we had our independence, or even before that, the CPA, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, and then we had independence, we have the 2013 crisis, we had the first agreement, now we have the revitalized agreement, and so many other agreements. Exactly. It's more like every time we're having pieces of agreement coming up, yeah. But then when you're looking at addressing, because the national level conflict trickle down to the grassroots level, yeah, that is one thing that is interesting. And when you're looking at many times when these conflicts are mediated, those voices are missing on the table. Yeah, those voices are really missing. And sometimes even the representation we talk about do not have actually the very access to the local knowledge that exists on ground. Yeah, we have people on the table who do not have much of the information about those mechanisms that exist on ground. And that's why, like, even when these mechanisms are signed, it remains a national level. Communities have very little knowledge about that, yeah, and it becomes difficult to implement. That's why all these disagreements continue to happen at the national level, and then if it trickles down based on the structure, as I was talking about the politicized aspect, this is where now people start having allegiances to either personalities or some parties on ground. And I was looking at us South Sudanese, we belong to certain communities, and definitely you'll have to associate with another person. And for me also, I still bring back what we talked about resilience before. In our programming, when I'm talking also again about resilience, is empowering a community that is resilient to political manipulation as well. Yeah, that is another angle that, communities are strong enough to resist political manipulation in their own communities. But then also, when you're looking at the mechanisms on ground. We also miss certain structures. For example, we have issues that requires even, we're talking about the restorative justice, which now we're missing out the aspect of the human rights as well. And for me, sometimes when you're looking at the revenge killings, it's actually because there's no accountability that is happening. Yeah, as much as there's compensation happens, but people still go back for retaliation. But what have we missed out as case practitioners? So many dialogues, we have had resolutions. But then how do we embed in maybe a concept of the importance of life or human rights within the communities? Or maybe even looking at an aspect of, we have the statutory court at the national level. Can we have the mobile courts rolled out on monthly basis or quarterly basis, using a community level mechanism on addressing the real justice at the community level, where people feel there is justice? Yeah. People define justice differently, but then can we have a component of justice? Because until we address that, it becomes quite a recurring thing in most of the communities where this is happening. And the moment we get an answer to that, it becomes easier. And I think I'll still come back to our cross-border work, where we have had resolutions, because communities needs to live, and then the peace that the little peace we have brought, they were able to establish market. So that market is for saddle cattle. You file out the Karamoja, file out that the cattle in South Sudan are actually cheaper, including the Turkana. But the South Sudan will love to access services also on the Kenyan side. So they have to make this work out. So now there was an incident where there was somebody who was killed, but then we already have resolutions. Instead of using their own laws, they say, where are the resolutions? What did you agree in those resolutions? But then we're able to use the resolutions on the number of cattle that have been agreed if somebody has been killed, and that worked out. So the aspect of accountability from a community way is very important. But then also, how do we link out those structures from the local level to sub-national and national level to ensure that their voices are actually reflected in the national conversations? We have members of parliament who do not have access to their own constituencies. Yeah, that's another thing. Do we have the platform maybe organizing assemblies or forum? I remember once, those days, SEFA would organize those assemblies where they would bring some of the members of parliament to the communities and speak to them. Those were very good forums because communities were able to also have access to question some of their representatives at the national level. Can we also have more of those kind of structures? Because some of even these members of parliament who are the representatives of the communities fear going back, either because of insecurity or maybe because of flooding or a number of factors, or maybe they were just members of parliament of the agreement not accepted by the communities. So it's just around, we miss out the aspect of linking the grassroots to the national level, but also as practitioners in this field, we are working in silos. Yeah, we're working. You find out Peace Opportunity Fund is working on the same thing. Maybe SEFA is also doing something here. And we are all working around meeting deadlines for our donors. How do we ensure that some of these efforts, maybe if we know each other as 6 practitioners working in the same area and they're doing all peace building, how can we sequence our activities in a way that can actually help create a sustainable peace that is sort-term intervention, basically? Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
I'm pausing because there's like 3 or 4 different things we could explore from all of this, but maybe with time rolling on, kind of skip a step in a sense but it's all linked to this question of sustainability. We're talking about some of these words that are bandied around a lot, but what do they actually mean? So with all of this in mind, where is the potential for sustainability in South Sudan? Let's just assume the funding will continue to decrease. Maybe for humanitarian funding will stay at some level, but that's unsustainable inherently. So where is the place to pour energy into to get sustainability?
Okay. The potential for sustainability is still in the structures that already exist on ground. Yeah. So those are structures that we should be able to support. And also, if there is a local knowledge, how do you tap into that? For example, when it comes to climate change, communities have a way of predicting climate change. Yeah. And for me, sometimes I'm looking at this around cultural diplomacy. Yeah. For example, when you're looking at in some of the communities, one thing they do is when they want to predict climate change, they'll slaughter a goat and they pick the intestine of the animals, and then all the people in the communities will read, and then they'll predict, okay, we're anticipating actually drought coming up. As practitioners...
Sounds very scientific.
Yeah, so that was one of the interesting, actually, things that every time I'm relating in communities, it comes out. So that was one thing when we work also integrating climate change into peace building. Yeah. So then we're like, how do we tap into that? So practitioners will come in a way that if the communities have a way of a knowledge of something, how do we prepare them in responding to that? Yeah, instead of waiting for that to happen. Because when climate change happens in cattle-keeping communities, you have to migrate in search for pasture. And then when you migrate to another location, the issues of land, that happens. And also resources as well. But then how do we prepare people for that? When you're looking at the Misria in Awim with the Dinkamalwao, yeah, what happens is they usually have the pre- and post-migration conferences. Yeah. So then if there's this local knowledge that we have, how do we prepare communities for the pre- and post-migration, where communities actually agree that if this happens, they can communicate to their counterparts that we may need a space for this period of time. And once that is done, we can actually move back instead of just migrating to another location. And then the host communities have no idea of how long you're going to be there in that particular location. So tapping into knowledge is one, but then also the structures that exist. In other communities, they have specific structures. In Eastern Equatoria, they have the marketets. This is more like a forum convened by elders. So sometimes it's more like on quarterly basis or annual basis, but it's respected within the communities. So apart from that, we have the chiefs, we have the Kral youths, we have the women, we have the youth associations who are working on that. Those informal groups, how do we best support those particular groups? Because they are the ones who are in the communities. And then how can those efforts also be strengthened with the national organization as well as the international in different forums? For example, currently we have a programming within the Great Lakes region, which is more incorporating grassroots voices. But this is with a specific focus of human peace and security. But we tackle different issues. So every year we have the Heads of State Summit that happen. So before the Heads of State happens, we have had different structures from the grassroots to subnational to national. But then now we are coming in as countries which are bordering each other, South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, Congo. You know, what are some of the cross-border dynamics that we will actually require attention within that particular platform? So we also try to bring some of those voices to that. So coordination is also important as much as we're working with those local knowledge and also the existing structures in the communities. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just to pick on, I quite agree with you. We need to really tap on the structures that are already existing, and there's structures that has been created as part of the peace efforts. And in our case, the Coup d'Ivoire, for example, it was not there. I mean, they're there, the Ghanaian youth were there, but they were not working as a committee of peace. Now they're there. How do we build on it? And I think that links to the point of where you got it right? From independence, from the beginning, there was an assumption that there was nothing to work with in South Sudan, that South Sudan is this new country that we need to bring all the new concepts and try to implement in South Sudan, which has clearly failed badly. And it's good now that there are certain structures that we can
continue to tap on to push the agenda of sustainability. But I think the most important one is also the government, because the reality is the humanitarian sector, the peace building sector is not here to stay forever. Some of these roles and responsibilities that are being taken by the humanitarian partners or the peace builders is actually the responsibility of the government. So how do we really tap into that? How do we start engaging with the government to relinquish some of this responsibility to them? I know in the context of South Sudan, it's quite complicated because we have worked in areas where there's no government presence. For example, Beach and the areas of Huno, it's such a struggle. But now how do you pursue those conversations? In Beach, through engagement with the government, the GPA chief administrator was able to go there for the first time. This is an area within his territory, but he has never been there. Yeah. But through the effort of reaching out to the most remote areas and also actively working with the government, now he has taken that opportunity to reach to those communities. So I think these opportunities that we can be able to tap on, and also looking at the reality that there are things that peace builders cannot do, it needs the government. So our work needs to be connected with continuous advocacy for the government to take in some.
But what do you mean by government?
Oh, so
What's your definition of government?
The authorities, the governor, the CA is the structures for government that.
Yeah, but what is government?
It's a people. They're not the communities, but the people within those structures. And I think when you look at law enforcement, for example, the military, they're part of the government structures, right?
Yeah.
And one of the big question that we've been grappling with is the question of accountability and law enforcement, where we're saying, oh, cattle are raided. Why is the government not sending the military to chase the criminals? So these are things that we cannot do. We cannot send the military to go and recover cattle. The communities cannot do that. But let's say the governor has the responsibility and the authority to do that. And they say we know
already has that, but he doesn't do it.
But he doesn't do it, yeah. So now how do we, call them out more to take that responsibility more serious? And should our advocacy only remain at the state and local level, or we need to now talk more higher to Juba and see what they can do? Because we have severally spoken to some of these government leaders within the state and county levels, but also you realize more and more they are sort of powerless. There's not much that they can do because a lot of things sits within Juba. So how do we also tap into the Juba clique so that they take some of this responsibility serious? Yeah, which can be difficult.
Rob, I think what I want to say is on this issue of sustainability, I think it's similar to what you said earlier, the word resilience. Yeah, what we're not doing enough of is to pause. How do we pause and learn? And I think we don't do enough of that within either programs or institutions, just to really say, look, let's stop. What are we picking up? So that those learnings can inform what we do next. When you do the pause or the learning as a condition to the concept node or to the contract, then it loses its meaning. I think every program needs to be designed in a way that we have a moment where we can pause every now and then and look at how it is. I agree with both of you. I think, and this is where as peace building opportunities find Peace Canal and Torch, we are now moving towards that sort of a direction where we now put emphasis on the local structures because we see they can work. We see now those local structures can easily take over. It's a recognition, and it came out of us learning from our engagement of many, many years. When we started about 6-7 years ago, our approach has been very adaptive in a way, and because we use those moments to sort of learn and move on. So now our sole focus is moving towards how do we empower, I don't like the word empower as well, but how do we really equip these structures with the tools that they can use? I like the word tools. So they can use the tools that they can use to kind of, they can use to intervene, they can use to better the community, they can use to kind of do all the stuff that they needed to do. I think those are the tools that we need to pull together and work with them. But I think the main element or elephant in the room that we are not really addressing is the role, not just the government, but the role of the donors. The person who hands over that money, I think it's quite key that they need to come to this space that we can have a conversation so that how they dish out that money and the control they have behind the money and the trust they could have on people. That is very, very important. Can the donors trust Peace Canal? Can the donors trust Torch? To be able to handle $10 million, $5 million without any reservation? Because if we want to go closer to sustainability, this is where we need to veer our vehicle towards it to enable that to happen. So for me, it's a key. We really need to have this sort of more deeper conversation and also have more risk. We need to take more risk and take it with us, especially with the national organization. There are those who are doing incredible work, and we need to really find a way on how they can come forward. So Rob, I think the sustainability, I'm getting tired of it every now and then because everyone is talking about it. Yeah. But then how do we make it more practical? In a sense, so that we can push toward, and that practical way, I think even us, we're not getting it right as POF, who are trying to mentor Torch and Peace Canal. What is it that is it, if we ask this Canal and Torch name, will they be like, yeah, you guys are great? I'm sure they have their own reservation. But then also it's the other way around. Can Torch and Peace Canal become very, not a brave, but can they speak up and say, Peace Building Opportunities Fund, Safer World, what are you doing? No, we don't want that,
Just picking up
At the opportunities.
Yeah. Still picking up, on the sustainability at the question of the donors, At Safer World, one of the things 3 years ago, we advocated for was flexible funding, not restricted funding. When it comes to giving the funding, because we operate in different contexts, our contexts are quite different. So when we advocated for that, one of the things we did is that when we got the money, the organizations they're working with, the national organizations, design projects that responds to the local context. So we had, I did mention that we also operate in a conflict cluster. So for example, if we want to address issues of conflict in Central Equatoria, we should be able to look at Jonglei. We should be able to look at Eastern Equatoria when we are discussing that. If we are working in lakes, then you should be able to look at also maybe Unity and Warab along that corridor. So when we had one of the things, and I still will advocate for that, is the flexible funding mechanism. Instead of the restricted where you write the proposal, this is the context, and we need to implement ABCD activities. But then with the flexible funding mechanism, it allows you to give the partners the money, envision that what are the dynamics in your communities, and it becomes flexible in a way that if dynamics change, they can still be able to address those dynamics related to peace building. So for example, in one of our flexible funding mechanisms, we had Eastern Equatoria, we had Central Equatoria, and then we had Jonglei. And I remember one of the critical issues that came out in Eastern Equatoria was Jonglei, actually, when there was a heavy cattle rain that happened. Over 5,000 cattle were taken, and then 90 children and women were abducted as well. So when we convened the roundtable discussion and in Eastern Equatoria, I think even the communities were suggesting that they wanted a law to be passed for the communities from Jonglei not to pass by their territory. And this is where we told them, no, we're peace builders, and that's why we're here. We cannot do that. So what solution do you have? To that? What's another better option that we could address this issue than passing a law with the law enforcement with your members of parliament, basically? But one thing that came out is that, okay, Eastern Equatoria also took it upon themselves that, okay, we need women from Jongle and us from Eastern Equatoria, but then we need that to be Juba. Yes. So we need to speak to also our fellow women, the other side. How do they feel having children that do not belong to them? Yeah, only on that side, yeah. And I think we allowed them to have that, and that forum was really good because afterward they established the mechanism for recovery of some of even the cattle and the children and the women back to their communities. But this was centered on the aspect of the flexible funding and also a community-driven initiative. So yes, working with the structures that exist is important, but then can we have funds that are flexible enough for them to come up with their own initiatives that address conflicts in their own corridor?
Yeah.
2 days ago, I was also I was getting just reports also from some of our peace committees that we've worked with. Yeah, the project has ended, but then now beyond mediating conflicts in their communities, they are even actually now constructed feeder roads, working on those roads that they are able to travel within that. This is months after like the project has ended. So this also explains the aspect of sustainability rooted in community ownership of every initiative that is being implemented. Yeah.
Sorry.
And then you earlier on asked about who is the government. I think the government now comes in our efforts is that who are those people entrusted with power? Yeah, to addressing some of those issues within the community.
You're saying a government is entrusted with power?
Yes. Like, for example, we all know that the commissioner is in charge of security. Yeah, in the county level. Excellently. Yeah, in the county level. And
Who entrusted him with power?
who entrusted the commissioner? He's part of the structure, the formal structure of the authorities that we have in the context of South Sudan. Very complicated.
With this person's patronage political network, he trusted him with power to sit there.
So we were talking about the constitution. This is where they derive their powers from.
The constitution.
That was creation, exactly. Yeah, but then all this still also goes back to how did we get there? Colonial legacy comes in as well, where we've ended up into having these structures. But just even after the even after the 2011 independence, did South Sudanese see that we're developing our very own constitution? This is a transitional constitution. And actually, for the very first time, we're going to have our own constitution after the agreement is done. It's done here, the process is done. When the process is done, when you read the agreement, it asks us to having the constitution that we want to have as South Sudanese, and then the other processes continues. But yeah, our context is sometimes very complex, and this has been done, this is not done, and we're trying to come in and see what opportunities are there.
Yeah. We could continue on this, but I don't want to get kicked out of the country. So, let's just to dovetail into some of these rapid fire things. Then, off the back of this, maybe you've already said yours, but if the donor community came to you and said, sort of like a genie in the bottle, you have one wish to ask of us, and we'll do it for sure. What would it be?
Wow, that's a difficult one. But I think for me, I think we do have South Sudan Humanitarian Fund, but how that is governed and used, again, doesn't meet the purpose of where things are pulled together. One thing this idea of the Nexus programming, okay, I really like that sort of process, but I think instead of the donor saying, "Is the money what would you like to do?" I kind of like some of the internal conversation we have within POF now, that we the gatekeepers, whether it's us, whether it's Safer World, whether we kind of kicked out, and the money goes directly to the community, and the design of that and the budgeting happens at that grassroots level. For me, I'm not naming this is where the community will move towards, but I think I would be moving towards how do we support system that we are so sure if you put money in, it will continue beyond. So I wouldn't put money again in the dialogue anymore. I would really look at, the dialogue. The communities can collect their own dialogues, and they can do that. It's a space under the tree, and they talk. But what comes out of that dialogue is where the money needs to go into, on how they will be done. So I'm just sort of dancing around it, but I think for me it's the modality on how the money is even given, and the parameters that are around on how that money will be used. I think if we can strip it back a little bit, we can get more closer to what that money can actually do in a better way. But the efforts comes in to, you bring your plate, I bring my plate, we put them all together, and then we share. That's where the modality needs to go towards. And that's what they think the donor needs to understand more. Again, I would love us to get 1 or 2 donors and have this conversation with them and see, because they may have their own fears and their own restrictions from their taxpayers and so on.
They're too busy to listen. Yeah. Briefly, what's your wish for the donor?
Well, I'm looking forward for that question to be posted to people working in that sector. And I think it's similar to what David is saying. Really, we have to, the answer to this question needs to come from the communities, what they need, what they think should be done to address this, what they need to be addressed within their communities. And I think that requires an honest conversation with the communities and the partners, which David have referred to as the middlemen and women, and also the donors, because sometimes they say the money is there, but it comes with a lot of restrictions. We know examples where like the money is given last minutes, where they just ticking boxes and saying, oh, here's the money, use it. That one will never work. Even if the communities or the middlemen have great plans for the communities, if the approach of giving the money is in that manner, it will never work. So I think it's really a space for let's talk. The donors, the communities, and the middleman. If they decide that they want to kick us out, it's also good, but let's have the honest conversation on what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Judith?
Mine, I already mentioned. If I have to sit with the donor, I think one approach that works very well is the flex subsidy mechanism. Yeah, where whatever communities have, they are able to decide any day, anytime.
Great. We could go on forever. This is fascinating. We're going to do some of these quick fire, which is to say it was not my idea. So if you don't like it, producer who will remain nameless. This has to be brief, right? Rapid fire. One person who is inspired or peace building Janan.
I think Bishop Paride Taban. I had an opportunity to travel with him to Quran. Amazing.
Nice. Cheers.
My dad, been in the military, and then we have to be away. And every time he comes months far away from the family to visit. And I think one of my inspirations to peace building is that to ensure I bring peace so that families can live together in the same place, and then having your family in another country and in a different country.
Amazing. Yeah.
I would say Dr. John Laran, because when I was that part of the core of Dejamer, he was not good. He was not Baba. He has some of his flaws, but he was good in a way of he could sell his idea. He could put his idea to you. You could have a conversation and have a debate, whether you agree or not. I think for me, he had certain vision, and that vision for me was quite clear from the get-go. And that's the vision intertwined with my own personal journey. That is the vision that has brought me today. And that is, how can I be part of a solution rather than part of the problem?
Very good. Okay, now this one's a yes or no. I'm backing you into a corner. Okay, imagine that the international community, all of us, leave tomorrow. In 10 years' time, is South Sudan better or worse off? Better or worse, not yes or no. Short in answer.
Better.
Better.
I'll say better.
Controversial.
Taking your way.
Rob has to go.
No, let's go.
Yes.
Very good. This one, I don't know if something will come to mind immediately. A myth about peace building that you think should be debunked. A myth about peace building.
I think it's the idea that just because we've done dialogues, peace is automatically supposed to come, because in our conversations we've mentioned a lot of ways that peace, you've been doing dialogue, but peace is a process, it's not one action.
All right.
A myth about peace building is that just because maybe the national level is peaceful, you think the entire country is peaceful as well. Yet people have their own definition of peace in their own context. Yeah.
Peace can also, peace is good, but peace is not good. Peace can actually be covered under a lot of injustices, but then, the outer part. But people would say this country is peaceful. You say Rwanda is peaceful, and now it's yeah. So, yeah, peace is a relative term.
Okay, last one. One thing the community or those who you're working with there have taught you that no university could.
Ooh.
I think for me it's patience and tolerance, and the example that comes to mind is Chief Gulech, when his family was attacked and his children abducted. He still stood there and said, "I am not going to cancel this mission. This has happened to me and my family, but I am going to continue." Yeah.
For me, it's actually their own knowledge that they have. For example, earlier on, I gave the explanation about the use of intestine to be able to predict climate change. That's not something you can learn from the university.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's something that the already existing knowledge on ground that we sometimes communities have been using over time, which you cannot even learn in schools. Yeah.
I think I'll lean towards that. I really want someone like Chief Gulech, Malala, even they're PhD holders, and I think we need to recognize that. I don't know how we can do that, but I want to make them at the level like Chief Gulech can be at the level of the Vice Chancellor Kate, like literally. The opposite is that Kate studied the class, but Gulech did not. But when you compare that, man, these guys are genius. So maybe we should start the PhD or certification. Yes. Dish them out certificates. They can hang them with their totals.
Honorary.
Yeah, honoraries. Yeah.
Very juice. Let's leave it there. This has been great. I mean, there's so many different elements that we needed to go further on, so we might have to.
One thing for sure.
Come back to you.
One thing, yes, that's what I want to say. One thing for sure is that I've enjoyed the conversation with you, Judith, and I think there has to be part 2.
Yeah.
Yes, so much.
Our favorites.
There has to be something we need to unpack here that goes a little bit longer, and in a way.
Very good. So watch this space, and we'll be back again with the next installments on whatever theme. Hopefully as interesting as SSP.
Yeah, it is.
Very good. Thanks again for coming.
My pleasure. Yeah. And thank you so much for hosting me. Yeah, and just to sit and reflect as peace builders in the sectors. Yeah, almost doing the same things, different approaches, but also similar interventions.
Yeah.
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 Just
Strong, yeah.